Okay, so we have the right atrium, the left atrium, the right ventricle, and the left ventricle. This video is going to be on the valves, and there's 4 of them. But before we get there, I hope you remember that the left ventricle pumps blood into the aorta, and that the right ventricle pumps blood into the pulmonary artery. These will be helpful for remembering the names of the valves later. Okay, so the 4 valves are located here, 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 and here. So remember that the point of every valve is to prevent backflow. You want a nice, efficient circuit, right? And you don't want to mess up any blood pressure or mess up how much blood any organ or the lungs receive by having blood go back and forth. You want it to just keep going one nice, smooth flow all the way through. And these valves help to keep that going, okay? These 2 valves up here we call collectively the AV valves. These 2 down here are going to be the semilunar valves. Now, the confusing thing about the valves is that there's a bunch of names for all of them. You should be able to at least recognize all of them and be able to describe all of them in one method or another. The AV valves stand for atrioventricular valves. It should help a little bit, right? The valves that are between the atria and the ventricles are the atrioventricular valves. And that's sort of the first way that we look at naming them. So let me erase this, and then we'll label all these bad boys. Okay, so between the right atrium and right ventricle then is going to be the right AV valve. Between the left atrium and the left ventricle is the left AV valve. Now, like I said, that there's multiple names for these. The right AV valve we also call the tricuspid valve. The left AV valve we also call the bicuspid valve. And it actually has a third name, the mitral valve. Everything on the left side of the heart sort of magnified a bit because the left side is so important. It's what pumps blood to the body itself. And remember that the left ventricle is the largest. It establishes the pressure to get blood to the brain and to the feet and everywhere. And so, this one's probably talked about more often. And as it would make sense then that it has 3 names and the other one only really has 2. So left AV valve, bicuspid, mitral. If you label them as any of these, they're all correct. And I recommend that you just kind of pick with the system, probably right AV and left AV since that's the easiest, but be able to recognize if you get a diagram on a test or anything that the mitral valve is the same as the left AV valve. Down here, these are semilunar valves if you remember. So this is right semilunar valve, and this is going to be our left semilunar valve. And then the other names, or the alternative names for these, come from sort of where they're headed, right? The left ventricle pumps blood into the aorta, so we call this the aortic valve. The right semilunar valve pumps blood into the pulmonary artery, and we call this the pulmonary valve. Again, these names mean the same thing, and you just should be able to recognize them. So 4 valves, right AV or tricuspid, left AV or bicuspid or mitral valve, right semilunar valve or pulmonary valve, left semilunar valve, aortic valve. And the purpose of the valves is to prevent backflow.